Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Agasicles, famous from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch. Back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going. What the heck are we again? The Enough to Keep Going regular weekly gaming podcast.
There we go.
Tonight is a GX show, a gamer experience show, and so we will be talking about our Picks Plays assignment. So our bi-weekly gaming assignment, a bout of intrigue that we issue to each other and try to get each other involved in different stuff, stretch our boundaries a little bit as gamers, and then we'll be talking everything else that we have had on our plate to play. Here with me, not as always, but definitely the last 2-3 times maybe, is Osiris Prime.
Wow, that was an introduction there. Hello, everybody. I got quite the menagerie of games here I played this past week or so. So,
Yeah,
should be interesting.
It's always good when it's a show chock full of variety. Boy, this Pitch Plays assignment is going to take a while. We've read it, I think, about 3 times at this point over the last couple of episodes. So hold on and strap in, because it's going to take me a while just to get through the introduction of what we have been assigned to play the last couple of weeks. Phil Spencer was recently interviewed by Kotaku. In the interview beginnings, he mentioned that over the long haul, he expects the Xbox Series X will be the bigger seller. That price will carry it to higher demand over the performance of the Xbox Series X. So this fortnight's assignment was a bit challenging. As best as we could, our assignment was to simulate the experience delta between the Xbox Series X and the Series S and report back on how much that delta mattered. We were to try, if we could, to play the same game on hardware sets that have a significant performance delta. And so we went about this a few different ways. And so I don't want to say that I cheated, but I definitely took some creative license with the assignment. And so one of the things that I played was Destiny 2 on a PC with an AMD Radeon RX 5700 XT. And contrasted that to my experience having played it the last couple of weeks on a box with an NVIDIA GTX 1070. But before we get to my report out on my assignment experience, Prime, what did you play? How did it contrast? And at the end of the experience, did you really feel like the hardware difference mattered at all?
So I actually had to change. I changed mine up from the last time I was on the GX show, or the last show I was on. I was going to do Doom Eternal, and I actually did play it on the Xbox One X. I didn't actually get a chance to play it on the S, though, unfortunately. So one game I have been playing on both is Farming Simulator, not kind of a different game than Doom Eternal. Although I'd like to talk about Doom Eternal if we get a chance to at the end here. But Farming Simulator. So I've been playing. I think I mentioned that in the last show. I've been playing with my son, and I've been playing on the X primarily when I've been playing with him. Um, and then I started kind of my own world that I was just kind of, I want to say messing around in, but actually playing in. And I started that on the S, and I've been playing that more or less on the S, a little bit on the X too, since it can, you can go back and forth, which is nice. Um, but definitely there is a load time difference. Just loaded into the world itself. It's a pretty lengthy load time at the beginning, just because once you're in the game, it's kind of like Grand Theft Auto, like it kind of just Grand Theft Auto 5, kind of just loads the world, and then like after that, there's like no loading or anything. Even when you're switching in between, like buying stuff and going to a store or whatever you're doing in the world, so that's kind of nice. So, but there actually is I don't want to say a significant difference. I mean, it's not super bad between the two, but there is definitely a greater edge on the X, the Xbox One X. Um, and then I can't really speak to the. I don't think I ever played. So we're playing multiplayer, but I think like I said, I always played on the X, so I can't speak to that if that's any faster or not. I mean, I guess that all depends on your internet connection too and all that. But and then just as far as like the graphics and stuff, didn't really see too much of a difference. I guess kind of like I don't know if you've ever played like say like trying to think, is it Fortnite? think it's like Fortnite. So when I play Fortnite, excuse me, and I guess that's kind of another game I could talk to, on the Switch, and then playing it on the Xbox, either the S or the X. There's like little things like like grass, like you don't really see grass too much, like actually like 3D in the world. It's more just like a flat plane when I'm playing on the Switch, but on the X, you actually see, actually blades of grass and like tufts of grass and all this other like waist level grass and stuff like that. And it's kind of like that on this one where there's a little bit more detail on when I'm playing on the X and Farming Simulator, as far as like the crops and stuff and just how things look. Like it looks a little clearer. It's not like not grainy, but kind of like blurry almost. So it does like kind of up res the graphics and stuff. So that's kind of nice. The vehicles and there's people in there too that pretty much looks about the same on each system. I didn't really see any difference there. Um, and then I'm trying to think there was something else I was going to speak to and I can't remember now uh, about the difference. But play
So,
wise, I mean, pretty much the same. Like I mean, just like when you're going around the world, there's no really big difference there. You're gonna say something?
yeah, so part of the thing for this assignment was that, and so in the assignment, I kind of targeted each of us in slightly different ways. So for you, you have been on record as saying, like when we go into E3 and we go into like the hardware announcements and stuff, that there's that a lot of that doesn't interest you, right? That you're interested in, what are the new games? What are you doing for me? How are you changing my gameplay experience? And so for you, I targeted this to to tease out, hey, if the progression had been from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One S, what would that what difference would that have made? Would what I mean? And you love the Nintendo Switch, right? Which is inherently a lower technology, lower spec console,
Yeah.
that supports a different set of games. And you mentioned Fortnite on Switch, and so one thing is, so and what I'm getting at here is, what are the differences in the gaming experience, beyond, in addition to the graphical differences. And I know, for instance, like on Switch, there's a change in the there's a change in that gaming experience simply because it changes who you matchmake with, right? Who you play with. You're on Switch. You're playing with mobile players, um, many of whom don't have controllers, and so I'm a beast on Fortnite on Switch, whereas, right, I'm maybe not so much. I'm definitely restricted to just solos on PC and on console, and so that changes. But by the same token, you mentioned how it looks a little more flat, and so on Nintendo Switch, your enjoyment of that experience might be changed because you may not feel like you're playing as much in a 3D, you know, world, particularly where something like elevation, makes a big difference, and depth makes a big difference. When I really need to have a sniper rifle in Fortnite because my ability to engage, I'm inherently driven to always engage single fire with everyone, and so often in Fortnite I don't like keep straight in my head like which weapons will just auto fire if you just hold the button down, because in other first person shooters in solo games, I always toggle, for the weapons that I can toggle, I always toggle them to single fire. So, so I'm kind of a little interested in, if you only have the Xbox One S, would would there be any limitations to your enjoyment of Farming Simulator? Would be kind of a place to start.
Oh, okay. For Farming Simulator, no. I mean, it's like I said, uh, it's pretty minimal as far as the differences I saw, like graphically and even just like I said, gameplay wise, like the controls. I mean, the controls are basically the same. I mean, really much difference. But I mean, like you said, I'm not one for fancy graphics and stuff like that. So no, it wouldn't deter me either way if I just had an S. If I said, "Hey, here's Farming Simulator," I was like, "Okay, yeah, looks good to me." So, and I can even speak to that on the Switch too because I've played it on the Switch, different version. Like I played, I think an iteration down, maybe a level down, from what it is from 19, which is what the one I'm playing on the Xbox. I think it's like 17. I think they release them like every 2 or 3 years. So Um, and then I'll jump on the Switch too and play it every once in a while. I'll do it more on the Xbox just because it's the newer version, so it has more stuff in it, and you can do mods on the Xbox, which is actually kind of nice. And the S, you can do it on S or X, so it doesn't matter either one. Um, and that was probably the significant thing on this game, from going from the Switch to the Xbox was, hey, I can do mods. You know, I can, you know, they have all these, modern tractors and stuff, but then you can go back and buy something from like, like the early 1900s or something if you wanted to, or all these other, there's like lawnmowers and like regular lawnmowers. Like they have these huge, like, off-road, like huge fields and stuff like this, but you can buy just like a zero turn, or a riding lawnmower or something, just something goofy like that, just to kind of play around with. And, me and my son were like, oh, that looks awesome. So that was another reason I bought into the Xbox One a little bit more than the Switch version.
Does that presence of mods again like change your kind of your overall gaming experience in a way that you would feel inhibited or would kind of suffer from FOMO if you didn't have the Xbox version, right? So like one of the things I went through for, much earlier on was when I went from consoles to playing exclusively on PC, and then came back to consoles, and shooters were present on PC. I had become, like you mentioned, I had become so used to playing shooters on PC where mods were available, and then I was like, I just don't I don't know, and I was accustomed to playing like all sorts of different like player level mods that have been created from editors, and a lot of those, on PC they get created by an individual creator, and then they become huge with the community, and then wind up becoming eventually like official game levels. And so when I made that initial transition back, like in the Xbox, in the original Xbox era, and Halo was, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be interested in, if I'm going to stick with playing shooters on console, because there aren't going to be level mods. So I just
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a thing where that difference in hardware and spec is the thing that enables the presence of mods, because you couldn't theoretically do them on Switch. And does that make an essential critical difference in your gameplay experience?
Yes, definitely, because they actually do have the newest version on the Switch, but it's only a single player for one thing, and I wanted to play with my son, so I was like, oh, come on. And I was pretty sure it was multiplayer, like when I'd seen it on the PC and stuff like that, and videos that my son was playing on or watching, excuse me. So then I was like, let me look on the Xbox, and I was like, yeah, hey, they have. I mean, I was gonna buy it just because they had the multiplayer, but then when I saw the mods, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, because my son is always asking, hey, Dad, can we get this mod for like just even other games too, like Minecraft and stuff. And I was like, oh, I only haven't, I don't have it on the, well, I have it on the PC, but I was like, I don't usually do mods there or for Farming Simulator. He was like, hey, can we get this and that on the old version? I was like, no, we can't do it here. But then on the new version, I was like, oh yeah, cool. So it did bring it up to me. And I was the exact same way too. Like you said, I started, I've been playing Call of Duty for forever now since the first one. And I started on PC. And actually when the first Modern Warfare, the original Modern Warfare came out, I played the beta on the Xbox, but then I eventually I bought it on the PC just because I wanted to see. I was like, oh, okay, let me check it out on the Xbox. I was like, yeah, but that pull of the mods, like you can always, you can have like a map that's like, like you're shrunken, so you're like in a big room, or you can have, like modern weapons on, when you're but it's the original Call of Duty was, World War Two, excuse me. So it was just kind of cool things like that. So it is kind of nice to have that mod support again, and that was one of the reasons I wanted. I was kind of glad when Bethesda started doing that with Fallout and Skyrim and stuff, where you can actually put mods into, a console game. And I hope going forward with the new systems, they do more of that, because that would actually be pretty nice to get mods again. I mean, there probably be super watered down, because obviously you can't have, like say you're playing like Call of Duty, and you have a Superman skin, you can't do that on the consoles. Usually they kind of frown upon that because they have like all the copyrights and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of nice to have some kind of modding in the game now. So that's kind of cool that they're starting to do that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really considered things from that angle. Anything else you want to cover on your farming simulator game assignment?
No, I think that is it.
Okay, well, I'm going to flip back and talk a little bit about the experience of playing Destiny 2, and whether or not hardware mods, hardware upgrades and hardware specifications really matter. Getting back to Phil Spencer's comment that he thinks that over time, cost is going to rule the roost more so than capability. Now with the Xbox One and the Xbox One S, there are some more tangible dividing lines. Like there's the 1440p versus 4K, and so clearly, if you haven't bought a 4K television, I don't know that it necessarily makes sense to buy an Xbox Series X. And if you don't envision making that step up anytime soon. And I say that from a person who had an Xbox 360, and one of my great pains was that just because of the way my life unfolded, I moved. My Xbox 360 had come right before I moved. I showed up in town, moved into an apartment that I had taken sight unseen. I didn't really understand what the network connections were. This was back in the day where, like, if Comcast would enable internet connectivity in your place by port or by drop, and so they didn't just come in and enable Ethernet right all over the house. Like it came, or even over coax, it came into a specific place, and they only gave you the one router. So I didn't necessarily have it out in the living room with a big screen television. So where I had it, my furniture hadn't showed up, so I went out and got like I got a 720p, I got a 24, something ridiculous, like a 19-inch 720p TV, maybe a 21-inch 720p TV, and it did 1080i. So, and I was on that for probably the better part of like a year and a half. And so here it was, I had this really great console and couldn't play like at 1080p. Now, admittedly, things back then, not everything rendered, but my point is that, there are pieces of hardware and pieces of your ecosystem that can make a difference. And when you buy hardware, you want to pair it with the things that enable all of its capabilities, and not fall short of that. But by the same token, if there's a piece of that you're not wrapped around the axle about, you can get away with not buying that high end of a piece of hardware. And so in similar fashion, I played Destiny 2, and really the difference is in what monitors, what displays you pair your GPU with for different setups. So I played at first, and again, I sort of cheated, maybe I kind of didn't. It's just that my gameplay, my lower end spec gameplay, was a little bit spaced out. It wasn't like I did the lower end and then immediately turned around and did the high end within a day or two of each other. But I had been playing last Pix Plays time period. I'd spent some time playing Destiny 2, actually on this PC, which I kind of have set up as my Xbox PC. It's where I play my console games with a controller, as if I still had an Xbox or a PlayStation. And so I'd been over here playing Destiny 2, and not only, and I was streaming, so I was already capped at 60 hertz, 60 frames per second. But I don't necessarily know that I would have had it cranked up too much higher than that. So I was playing at 1920 by 1080p at 60 hertz, and then to contrast it, I played on another gaming PC I have that has a Radeon, as I mentioned, a Radeon 5700 XT in it. I uncapped any frame limits. I wasn't streaming. I set up, it was on FreeSync monitors. I set up FreeSync. I auto-tuned it. I turned, I had it on the highest graphic settings, etc. And during that gameplay, I went from getting the 60 frames per second that I get over on this workstation, to getting anywhere from 90 to 120 frames per second on Destiny 2 at the other workstation. And did it make a difference? When I go back in history, I think I may have mentioned this on maybe this podcast or once before, the day that I brought home my Sega Saturn, right, and I made that jump from, I think it was from 16-bit to 32-bit. I had gone from the Sega Genesis to the Sega Saturn, and it played, the first game I put in was Panzer Dragoon, and it played that introductory flying sequence in Panzer Dragoon. And it was just the opening game trailer. I hadn't even hit the start button to start the game. Like, it played through that intro, which was about probably 2.5, 3 minutes long. It was a lengthy intro. I literally shut my Saturn down, sat down on my couch, picked up my phone, called my brother, and said, 32-bit makes 16-bit look like Pong. And we just had a really lengthy conversation about, like, what the visuals look like on the Sega Saturn. And so, the first time I uncapped all the frame rates and kind of cranked up all the graphic settings on Destiny 2 to high, there was kind of that moment. Like, there were things in Destiny 2 that I hadn't noticed before from a graphic perspective, because I usually don't care about cranking it all the way up. I think the game looks fine and I'm streaming it when I'm playing. I'm streaming it a lot of times. It's not often that I play it, without a capture card in between, and so I don't necessarily have things cranked up that high. And so, for me, there's an immediate kind of consumption. I don't want to say bump up, but there's a certain euphoria associated with kind of going from, um, eating Papa John's pizza versus sitting down at a fine Italian restaurant, right? Like they're both Italian food theoretically, but there's an aesthetic associated with the latter that you don't get with the former. And I kind of felt that the first time I was like, wow. First of all, I mean, um, a big part for me is especially gaming on PC, is when you play a game that makes you feel like the investment in hardware is worth it. Um, and so, and so I feel that's big. Would I enjoy Destiny 2 less? No. And so I think overall I walk away from this assignment with the feeling that hardware specs and increasingly more powerful hardware will always make me feel better about playing a high-end, high-performing game. But being on low-end hardware, I don't know that that will ever make me enjoy a game less, right? It can only, that difference in hardware can only improve that gaming experience, but it doesn't hamper it in between. Um, so I don't know, man. I think that's what I came away from the assignment with.
When you were playing Destiny 2, were you just playing like the story through the story mode or through the story levels, I guess?
I was playing. So Destiny 2 is in a weird place right now. I would say most recently. So the new season drops next week. It's been delayed. It's associated with a graphics bump up that will be on consoles. I don't necessarily know that they're doing anything to enhance it on the PC version. So it's all just most recently it was just about leveling and grinding and doing quests and bounties, which is kind of what Destiny 2 is now all the time. Like I mean, like you get a story update once a year, and you play through that, and then you spend the rest of the time doing lesser kind of often story driven missions, but they're all just the story dressing is really just like a voice log, or you hear a voice on the radio, and maybe there's a cutscene or two dropped in there for those, but that's kind of pretty much what it is. So this week, the only thing I've been doing is grinding to level up weapons, even though they tell you shouldn't be doing that because everything's going to get bumped up to light level 1050 next week, which is fine. But I'm like, but the job of Destiny 2 is this is what you do, so that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was just wondering because I know a lot of times with, and I know you're not a big multiplayer guy, but the bump up in fidelity and the graphics and stuff, really makes a difference when you're playing multiplayer. The frames and all that. So I don't know if I don't know if you ever do Crucible stuff. So if it made a difference between the two.
I don't do Crucible stuff, but I played, but recently I've been playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare on PC. I play Fortnite on PC, and yeah, absolutely. I think DBQ I think asked me a few weeks ago whether or not like the higher refresh rate on monitors really made a difference, and so what I've spent this year doing in refreshing my monitors and displays is focusing. And overall, I've backed off this year in. There was a point where I was focusing on bringing everything up to 4K, and I stopped doing that. I've topped out at 1440p, and really what I've spent effort this year doing is putting monitors, well, building systems, and then putting because this is one thing I normally never do, is putting games on those systems that are specifically suited to that monitor. So I have a workstation. So my workstations where I have 1440p monitors is where I put 1440p monitors, but ostensibly slower refresh rate monitors. So 1440p 60 hertz monitors is where I put like my flight sims, space sims, driving games, but also like my RPGs, MOBAs, and things like that. Where I play multiplayer shooter games, I have 23 inch or 25 inch 1080p monitors at 144 and 165 hertz on two different setups. And so, again, a lot of times I'm there streaming, but absolutely, if I'm not streaming, I definitely crank them up all the way to, I uncap the frame rate in the game. I crank them up to 144, 165 hertz, which is pretty much where I run them, during normal ops most of the time. Um, don't focus so much on increasing the quality of the graphics so much. I dial down the DPI on the mouse. Yeah, so I do all those things, right? I really read up a lot last year. Again, things that I ignored before. Read up a lot last year on what like competitive gamers, what types of monitors they used, and tailored those workstations to that with those kind of games. So yeah, and in that case, it absolutely definitely matters. Dialing down the DPI on my mouse is probably the biggest of that, but definitely having it on a high refresh rate monitor absolutely helps. That was probably more than you wanted to know.
No, exactly what I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and and staying at in the 23 to 25 inch monitor range, and up at 19 and down at 1080p, means your total focus surface area that you're looking at isn't this giant 1440, 27-inch 1440p monitor, where you're looking around all over the place. It keeps your focus pretty tight, and then keeping it at 1080p just means you don't have, really. I mean, things in Call of Duty, first of all, really aggravate me sometimes. How very difficult it is to pick somebody out against like a dark background or something like that, and so. Having monitors where the resolution isn't that high is definitely helpful. Yeah. So with that all being said, that pretty much ends our Picks Plays assignment segment. So we're about 30 minutes in. I don't know, about halfway through. Let's go ahead and talk about everything else that we've been playing this week. Prime, we'll start with you with this little game called Concept Destruction on the Switch.
Yeah, so actually, I saw this game. I think probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago on the on the item shop on the eShop. And this is on the Switch, and I think at the time it's pretty. I mean, it was pretty cheap then. It was probably like $6 or $7. And I was like, oh, this kind of looks cool. It's basically just like a destruction derby kind of a game. But all the cars and the environment and stuff is made of like cardboard, basically. Um, the premise is you kind of when you're going through the beginning kind of trailer or little video at the beginning, it's like there's a guy like drawing on a like a draft board, and he's like, these are all concept type of cars, and all of a sudden they come to life, cardboard form, but they come to life. So you're basically just going around these big arenas, just trying to destroy the other cars. So very simple game. All it has is a championship mode where you just you go through a series of levels, and I haven't gotten to the end of the championship level yet. So I'm not sure if you like keep going, or if it like updates the hard, if upgrades the hardness, or how difficult it is, or like what happens at the end. But so far I think I've played maybe like 5 or 6 levels, and I was still going. So I was like, all right. So then after each, kind of like Mario Kart, after each match, you get graded on how you did, how many kills, and how is you have like three main parts that you can destroy, which is the wheel, the transmission, and the engine. So it kind of grades you on that. So um and then other than that, there's a single player mode where you just play, or a single match mode where you just play one match. It's not like a series of matches. And then there's a multiplayer, which I believe is I don't know if it's just local, because it's grayed out for me right now. So I'm not sure if it's local or I have to unlock it maybe eventually after the championship match. But I'm pretty sure it was only local when I was reading through the description when I first was just kind of like looking at it. So, which is fine. I mean, it's a pretty simple game. This is by a developer called Thin Ice Games, and that's Thin Ice one word. Um, they've made pretty much like all the other games I see on here, Twin Robots, and Cross Crush. I've never heard of these. So it's like super small, indie games, indie titles, but it's pretty fun. The controls, they're a little I think it's the turning that gets me the most because it's like if you just even touch it slightly, you're just like like spinning out. So it's a little weird on the controls, but overall it's pretty fun. The cars deform as obviously as you hit them and stuff. Like I was playing earlier, and someone kept hitting me on my right, the front right side or front left side. So my tire was like bent all the way backwards into the car, and I was barely moving as I'm trying to accelerate around around the arena. So, but it's a fun little game. It's nice just to play play through the championship match, play a few games in there, and then I could just put to sleep and come back to it later. But I'm enjoying it so far, and I bought it actually. It was like I said, I was like half price was like I think 350 or 375, I think altogether with tax and all that. So it wasn't too bad,
So
and I think I might even use my gold points, so it was even less.
so is this game closer to Mario Kart or closer to like a Forza Horizon 3 in terms of how it looks?
I would. Yeah, definitely Mario Kart. It's more cart. Yeah, it's definitely more cartoony. Um, and like I said, even like with the grading system and stuff, it definitely reminded me of Mario Kart after each match. Um, I was just about to say something. I keep forgetting things. I don't know why. I'm losing it tonight. I
It's
was going
been
to say something.
it's
I
been,
totally lost my train of thought.
it's been that kind of a week, and
Yeah,
an election going on, so that hasn't helped.
that doesn't help. Um, But no, yeah, it's a pretty fun little game. I mean, like I said, it was pretty cheap. Even at full price, it's like $6. So it's not going to be that bad.
Is this
But
something that's
yeah,
is it something that's also available on mobile?
it is not. Amazingly enough, it's actually on PC and then on PlayStation and Xbox One and Four, PlayStation Four. So it came out on theirs too.
So did it? You mentioned in the last couple of weeks. You mentioned how well overall over the last couple of months you've talked about how racing games don't really do it for you, um, and then more recently that in order to play a racing game now it has to be something with some shooty pew pew or something else in it besides just competitive racing, wheel to wheel, speed to speed. Does this do it for you from that aspect? Even though this doesn't have like pickups and power ups and kind of Mario Kart, Crash Bandicoot type of kart racing with weapons, does it do that? Does it do it for you by weaponizing the car itself?
Yeah, and I remember what I was going to say now. I was going to say it's more akin to Wreckfest if you've ever played that. Obviously, just not with super detailed graphics. It's cardboard cars for But yeah, it definitely because it's more of a hey, I'm just going to use my cars, smash into something else. It definitely it's better that way. And as far as I can tell, so far there's no racing in it. In Wreckfest, there is racing parts. You can do actually racing in there besides the destruction derby and stuff like that. But this one's just like pure destruction derby right now, as far as I can tell. So yeah, it definitely scratches that itch. Yeah, and I'll never be like the car simulator type of guy. So I just can't do it. It's too much.
Yeah, no worries at all. So the first thing on my list for the round robin segment is that I've been playing was Far Cry 5, and so last week I had finally gotten around to getting the Division 2 back on my revisit list. It was on the list since the beginning of the year, and I just hadn't picked it during as different rotations in my playlist came up. But I'd always regretted it. It was firmly on the radar. I was like, man, I need to get back to the Division 2. Need to get back to the Division 2. Finally did last week, and I spent maybe 3 or 4 days with it. I hit a point where I was like, okay, I think I can spend some time playing something else. I was switching stream setups, the day after, but I was like, I was still on my last stream setup, and I was like, well, I want to play something here. I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and finally, since it is another Ubisoft game, finally get Far Cry 5 on PC. I'd had it on PlayStation 4, but of course, as I mentioned recently, I got rid of my PlayStation 4. But it's one of those games that I played like a crap ton of in 2019, probably. Um, yeah, I mean it's a 2019 game, but I played a really big chunk of it, maybe, or maybe it's a 2000. I think it's a 2018 game actually, but I played a huge chunk of it in 2019 on PlayStation, And when I got rid of that box, I was like, I gotta get back, I gotta get back, I gotta get back. And even while I had it on PlayStation, I was like, this game probably plays amazingly on PC. I need to get it on PC, and didn't do it. So I finally got a hold of it. I spent a few hours with it last Friday. Um, Arguably, there's probably a better sequence of of base camp like takedown. So you have different encampments around the map that the enemies are in charge of. The largest of these is one where there's tons of enemies. There are a lot of fixed buildings. There's a ton of verticality to it. Reinforcements can show up by a nearby road a rural road that's kind of going by. It is, in short, probably the last place that you should assault, A, by yourself, and B, until you've leveled up with enough weapons. I had neither, so I swam across the river, figured I was going to do this amphibious assault, and got trounced several times because it was the opening of the game, and I didn't have like the array of weapons that normally you have after you've gone through the first several hours of it. That all being said, I finally pulled off, not taking down the whole encampment, but taking down a big chunk of the encampment. And then after I kind of got over the hump where I had been failing and failing and failing, then they got additional people. And I was like, okay, I'm never going to get this done in a night, particularly while I'm sitting here streaming it. So I was like, I'll just put this aside until I can come back to it, not streaming. But I had a ton of fun while playing Far Cry 5. It is very close and akin to Destiny 2 in that, despite all of the naysayers and the detractions people will make, I find that in its genre, it is one of the best feeling games from a shooter mechanic perspective. I could do without, overall, this isn't a shooter mechanic, but I could do without the animals in the game that you often like can't see and then attack you at the last second. They're just a hassle, and I'm just like, don't bother me with this right now. I'm trying to figure something more important out. But I got it. It's there. I look forward to being able to choose through bits and pieces of it. It's probably one of those games that I'll install at every PC, and I don't. I probably won't be doing much competitive on that because I don't do Far Cry multiplayer. I don't even know if there is. I think there is multiplayer in that mode. I'll have to check, but the single player is enough for me.
A competitive multiplayer in Far Cry? I don't think they did.
I don't know. I don't think there's a competitive. I want to say there's
co-op, right?
A co-op. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't played one since I think 2, Far Cry 2, and I think I might have even played a little bit of the first one back on the 360, where it was kind of that jungle environment.
Yeah, with Jack Carver.
Yeah, but it's been I haven't played anything past 2. I'm pretty sure. Maybe 3. There was one that was like in Africa at one point, wasn't there? Was that 2? I think that was 2.
I think that was 2.
Yeah, that was the last one I played.
Yeah,
and I was like, it didn't. Something about it just didn't click with me. I don't know what it was.
That is where I played it on the PlayStation. I guess it was PlayStation 3 that I played it on. The biggest thing I remember was it was a very limited field of view, and so, in a day and era where, at least for me, first of all, if when I'm playing on a PC, if the option to open up the field of view to some theoretical maximum, I always take it up to the maximum. Like I was like, you can't get too much on the screen for me at once, But I remember this was a very limited field of view, very similar to I want to say was it Killzone 2 that was out on the PlayStation 3. It was either Killzone 2 or Killzone 3, and both of them suffered from having, to me, what was a ridiculously tight field of view. On the Killzone games, it was. I complained about it not being 90, and I think they either confirmed or something that it was actually like 87 or something like that. But yeah. I don't think there's competitive multiplayer. I think it's just co-op, and of course I've never opened up my system to allow. I suspect that there would be a lot of shenanigans involved with that. So no, thank you. I'm fine.
Have you played? Did you play 4 or 3? The ones previous to this one?
I didn't. So Far Cry has a long and sordid history. I think we've talked about it a little bit on the show before, so hopefully by now, for long-time listeners, it's sinking in. But the original developer was Crytek, but Ubisoft owned or exerted rights on the IP. There was a point where they didn't get along with Crytek long term, so they asked Crytek to go away and do something else. They then gave the IP to one of their some other development studio, and that's why you've had that's why you get um, Crisis 2 and Crisis 3, and then if you look at the Far Cry lineage, you have well, sorry. So that's why from Crytek you don't get games really in the Far Cry kind of universe or vein. That those all come from Ubisoft and have nothing to do with Crytek. So, and Far Cry, the first one with Jack Carver, was a far and away different game than later Far Cries have been.
Yeah.
Having been a huge fan of the first one, I'm pretty sure even this year I had the first one installed in various places here, but I've never been a fan. I wasn't a fan of 2. I bounced off of 2. I played it for a little while, and then the whole go fetch kind of mission structure to that, I was like, yeah, I've had enough of that. But now that they've made that transition to open world, and again, I skipped 4 and 5 because I had I assumed that it was more like Far Cry 2. I'm sorry, I skipped 3 and 4. But with 5, with its kind of return, and it's leveraging all the lessons that Ubi has learned from its third-person open world type games, and layering that kind of structure on top of a first-person shooter, I think has worked out really well.
Is this one, because I know I think they kind of get a little bit crazy like each iteration. Is it feel more of is it kind of feel more of like a Just Cause-y kind of a game where you can kind of just do crazy things, or is it more focused on, hey, you gotta take these camps out, you gotta do it in a correct way, otherwise you're just gonna get, like you said, you're gonna get mowed down if you don't have the right stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not. No, so I don't think it's Just Cause. Just Cause, the difference to me in how I approach Just Cause versus Far Cry 5 is Just Cause, you look out over the horizon, you see a city or a town or an encampment or whatever, you see big red objects right around it, which always cues you that red objects are things you can blow up in Just Cause, and you're always like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff to blow up over there. Let me go wreak some mayhem. And so it's a very kind of Grand Theft Auto kind of like experience and approach. Whereas on this one, just like you mentioned, right, it's highly tactical. Like I typically get up close to a base and kneel down in concealment and like just spend some time pondering, hey, what's the best approach to this? Which side of the encampment should I come from? How am I going to use cover and concealment? Because you can never get away with just coming in there all Bogart and going toe to toe with them. The numbers will just eventually get to you. But yeah, and it can be further enhanced by having like a companion who can assault the compound, with you. They're amazingly efficient companions. So unlike like Ghost Recon years past, where like your AI companions are complete idiots, and so having them along with you is actually an impediment to accomplishing missions. But they're almost too good in this game, because if you have one of the AI allies like assault a base for you, it's feasible that they will take down the entire base and there'll be nothing left for you to do. So I actually play that game without hiring companions 99% of the time, just so I can experience all the adversity that they have on each encampment level myself.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like a lot like Ghost Recon, at least Wildlands, because that was the last one I played. I don't know if you ever played that one. But yeah, where you just have your squad, and yeah, you definitely can't just like go running gun in there. You'd get, even though you have 3 other people with you. I think there's only like 1 other person you can have on this game in Far Cry 5.
No, you can hire. I hired 2 people at once
Okay.
last time. You may not always, as you transition, you may not always be able to bring them with you, because I hired 2 people, but yet I only had um, in confined, uh, a vehicle, and then I think I was limited by how many people could be in the vehicle, and so there's that kind of a thing. So, but yeah, this is Ubisoft, and one thing Ubisoft does well is they take excuse me, the assets from one game and put them in a blender and respin them, and it's, you know, part of you could argue that's the exact same game, but it's in a different setting and with a different set of characters and a different mission structure. And Ubisoft gets away with calling it a new game, and I'll say for my part, I continue to play them, even though I look at it much more so as and when you look at them from a business analysis perspective, they're one of the industry leaders in kind of having solved the staffing problem, and so I've commented before how you get this list of studios that have helped out on any Ubisoft game. That's like, I'm like, why don't you just list all the Ubisoft studios? But for instances, Ubisoft Montreal can be struggling with, let's say, a ray tracing problem, and through their automated resourcing system, they are able to find out, oh, there's a developer who's a subject matter expert in ray tracing at Red Storm in North Carolina, and they don't have a big release coming up, right? So he's got some spare cycles. You can get help from that person. You can get that person assigned to your team. If you fight that out. Yeah, they're one of the most efficient and forward leaning with just kind of globalizing their workforce across multiple development studios. So yeah, easy for them to crank out things. The downside is that they look, seem, and feel often very similar.
Yeah, this one's first person at least. It's a little different, like the Ghost Recons
Right,
or the
right.
Division.
Yeah, but I was thinking today on the drive home, and I was like, I was talking on the other podcast I'm on, and that person was like, no, you could look the asset. You could tell the assets are there, right? I mean, you can. They're that looks exactly like the thing from whatever thing, and that started making me think about drones, and I was like, I think there's a drone of some type in every Ubisoft game. Even in like the Assassin's Creed games when they do the cutscenes back to like modern day, I'm pretty sure that at some point those have had drones in them. And I'm like, I think they just designed these drones once. And then they use them across every single game that they have, which, you could argue, well, there's nothing new here, but by the same token, that's exactly how we approach things, you know, in software is, yeah, if I'm going to write it once, I'm going to sell it every place that I can get, or get use out of it. So, yeah, it creates an interesting optic on Ubisoft.
See
Hey,
if there's drones in the newest Watch Dogs. I'll look out for that.
oh, I think there's definitely drones in Watchdog Legions,
Yeah.
undoubtedly. Yeah, like I've seen screenshots of them, and they look very similar to the drones you're going to see in the Division 2 and
Oh yeah.
um, another game. So, so you have been playing something decidedly not associated with taking on Black Hat militia in the mountains of Montana. So, why don't you tell us about something a little bit more down to earth that you've been playing?
I've been back. I went back to my island in Animal Crossing. Yeah, I jumped back in there because they had the Halloween event, and actually they had the big fall update that they did. So obviously the Halloween event was one of the major things in that. And you had Jack, which is well, I don't want to say he's a pumpkin. He has a pumpkin mask at least. I don't know if he's actually a pumpkin, but he visited the island on Halloween, and you can give him candy and get like special items and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of go through and get that. I'm not one of those guys, one of those people in Animal Crossing that likes to do the time travel where you can like fool around with the system clock and kind of jump back and forth. But even that's pretty limited this time around because the other Discord server I'm on, they were doing that. But then like when these holidays come around, they're like, oh hey, I didn't get everything that I was going to supposed to because obviously they throw out these they do these updates like pretty much every month, at least one major update a month. So they're actually pushing stuff to the game. So you miss out if you do the time travel stuff. So they've have like different creatures and stuff now that you can gather and collect. So I've been trying to get that. But yeah, it had been a while since I had played regularly, but I've pretty much been going on every day for the last couple weeks. So I think they're going to do something for Thanksgiving, maybe at least something small. Um, but other than that, I'm just going through and kind of just revisiting my world and cleaning up because there's weeds and bugs and stuff everywhere that I need to get rid of. So it's been a while since I've played. Um, consistently at least. So, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. It's
You,
just a game
you need to
I
find
can,
you need to find those guys from The Walking Dead who somehow managed to keep all the yards immaculately manicured, even though it's a zombie apocalypse and nobody ever sees them out doing any yard work.
no, I didn't. I gotta hire those guys because definitely I needed some weeding and stuff to do. Yeah, they must go out there with like a manual mower, I guess, or something, so they don't make too much noise. Attract the zombies.
Uh, so, so, so I've also been playing the Division 2. And pretty much in talking about Far Cry 5, I also talked about the Division 2 because it's an Ubisoft game. But hey, they do the thing right. It's an immense amount of fun. The thing I always talk about in the Division 2 is you drop into the game wherever you are. You're at the White House or you're out at one of the settlements. It's like there's just a laundry list of stuff to do, like patrolling things in your territory, going and taking down, everywhere from the one thing that the Division 2 does, I think, an amazingly great job of. It's side missions and the stuff that is not the capital objective. Somehow they've packaged that in a way where lots of times I feel like doing a side mission is a waste of time that detracts from me getting through the game main line. Um, and like with Destiny 2 originally, and I think DBQ and I played that maybe a little bit collaboratively, but like I just wanted to like blast through the story. Like I didn't want to be bothered with any side. I had to do side missions for a while to level up, but like other than that, I'm only playing like the main missions. And so, but the Division 2, the side missions feel worthwhile. They contribute to your overall um, uh, you know, maneuverability in the game in terms of how you proceed from one district to another within Washington D.C. Because they provide way space, layover places and places you can get health and ammo, places where you respawn, and so on and so forth. So you get more of a feel of like living city and liberating it. So in my gameplay last week, one of the things I did was I liberated the Washington Monument, which is it's funny that it's such a pain, right? Because other places that I've liberated, you liberate them. There's an initial counterattack from the enemies. You take them down. This is the first time that I took them down, and then I tried to do things. Well, I don't know. I felt like I was trying to do things like really, really brutal to try and in the hope that I would prevent further attacks and assaults on Washington D.C. on the Washington Monument. That didn't really happen, and so the funny thing is that you liberate the Washington Monument. It is absolutely one of the most contested places and territories within the game. So it's like I liberated it, but then I was like 2 days later, I was like, I wish I'd never liberated this thing, right? Because it's like every single time you want to stop by there to get health or you respawn from there, it seems like they're always under siege, which is starkly different than other places that I've liberated. And so it's clear to me that something within the engine and the AI drives certain behaviors around certain parts of the map, which I thought at the end was really cool. So. But yeah, and then you're always leveling gear. Finally this time coming back to it, figured out and understood like the progression model of your agent and how he or she progresses upwards. And I think I'm finally getting my handle on decent inventory management. So yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Did they still have the dark zone in the second one?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they have.
I know that was like a high loot area, right?
Yeah, I mean, so they have areas you can go into and participate in PvP is the main thing. As you can imagine, I don't have any interest in doing that. Going out and adventuring amongst a bunch of sweaty humans. So I was like, I don't think I need this, But yeah, it's there. There's a few places it seems like scattered around the map where you can go and engage in PvP. So the other game that I've been playing, and probably the biggest one on my list because it's the newest game, is WRC 9 FIA World Rally Championship. So I picked this game up recently. It was my second new video game for the month of October. Um, Usually each year, pretty much the Dirt series, the series from Codemasters that kind of comes out of the Legacy Colin McRae um, series, has pretty much always ruled the roost. It's the most technically wonderful, has the best tracks, best physics. The WRC series has kind of always been around. Again, this is the 9th iteration, but it's never, to me, ever been able to achieve parity by any means with the Dirt series. And so when Dirt comes out, that firmly lands on my radar. But I'm lucky if I see WRC go by in the conversation. This month, it actually held a pretty decently high review score amongst all of the Xbox games that had come out. And so I monitor all of those lists now, even though I don't have an Xbox or PlayStation 4. I probably monitor the individual lists more now because I'm super concerned of like, hey, if there's a game that is on the consoles that you could also kind of go out of your way to get, even though you played on PC, I've been trying to figure out and make sure that I do that. So, but FIA World Rally Championship is really amazing. I talked last year about how the F1 series from Codemasters brought story elements into it. And so WRC9 doesn't necessarily have story elements beyond like text and emails and whatnot, but it does offer you this do loop where you are able to kind of focus on your individual team members. So you have a team that I think is composed of roughly like 25 people. So you have, let's just say 8 main people, and then you're able to keep a body of reserves. You unlock different positions, and so in the recruiting screen, the only people you will have available to you are ones who are in a profession that you've unlocked. So I've been going through that. I was actually doing really well and was ranked really high in a junior rally championship. And just when I thought I was going to kind of become the king of my own hill, the season almost ended, and somebody approached me with a ride for the following pro season. So when I accepted, that just completely brought the junior season to a halt, immediately catapulted me into the next season, and next thing I knew, I was racing in the big boy leagues, which was another skosh of additional difficulty. But the game plays wonderfully. I've been playing it on a 5700 XT. It's taken me a while to dial in the settings, but I am playing in DirectX 12. What was the other thing I was doing from a hardware perspective? But
wheel and pedal or just controller?
Just a controller. So I need to replace my wheel and pedals. The last set that I had finally gave up the ghost in September. I'd had those wheel and pedals for. No, they weren't that long. I probably had them for about 5 years, and so yes, I'm in the hunt for another pair. But just as I sat down to get started with this, I said I'm not going to replace them right now. We'll wait for a later iteration with a decent driving game to make that upgrade. But I have been playing with the Microsoft Elite V2, and so that's definitely been a wonderful, incredible experience because it's such a great controller.
Do you change that controller around then a lot for like if you're playing a racing game or if you're playing I don't know, like a shooter or something?
So I'm definitely at the point where I absolutely use that. Maybe I don't absolutely use it. There are times I still rotate, like you and I talked about a few weeks ago, but definitely for like a high end racing simulation game, and like in this case where I'm playing it for the first time, I'm like I'm not even like entertaining the thought of playing this with another Xbox controller just to get use out of it. I'm definitely hooking up the Elite controller. So the sad thing with
Top of the line.
yeah. The sad thing is I've definitely played with it and and messed with all of its different control surfaces and what I haven't dug deeper into finding out anything that like disassembly or modifications, or I haven't even put a case on it or anything like that. So there might be some other options to further tailor that experience. Um,
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying. Now, I know you rotate through these games, and you kind of mentioned before how you did research on monitors and stuff like that. But do you do that like with the games and the controllers where hey, I need to have like the perfect setup, for this controller. So you go through and say, hey, this is, I'm gonna switch it to these sticks or switch the paddles, or I don't know if you use those paddles or not, but just do everything you can.
Not at this point. I haven't gotten into where like I really do anything. Like I use controllers just as they are out of the box. As far as physical mods go, now I mentioned I can't remember if I said it to you while you were on a specific show, but you mentioned to me last year, and I think actually when we were playing together at one point, you were talking about going into the controller calibration screen and kind of changing how your controller was tuned and like how much dead space it had, and that kind of thing. Which historically I have never done. I'm just like, look, whatever the default settings are, I'll just figure out how to use them in either the I'll say that the controls are good or the controls are bad, but I'm not working to compensate for like a bad control scheme. But I will say I have been going in as of recently and going into individual games and saying no, the dead zone needs to be a little bit more like this. So I did that with F1 2020. Which was probably the last racing game that I played before this. I have had no need to go in and tune that controller. And I will say that I don't know. I don't think that it's auto tuning, but I will say with the Elite Controller V2, I think I've used it to play 2 or 3 games, and like each time I've been like, yeah, no, I don't need to go in and tweak like the settings on this thing. So I'm not sure what they're doing, or I know that. Well, I know that the GPU can go out and game and grab like game specific profiles. So I don't have Microsoft software installed anywhere, so I don't know that the controller can do that. But however it's doing it, it seems to be perfect out of the box every time I go to use it, on a particular game.
Nice.
All right, Prime. So it's on you to take us out.
All right, so
Yeah.
on my my Wheel of Fortune like wheel that I use for my battle royale games as of late, I'm jumping back into PUBG lately. Last couple weeks, for actually probably like a month, really. I actually started playing it again. Um, I play Call of Duty, Warzone, and I play obviously Fortnite and Spellbreak and all these other games. But PUBG, I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's because of the realism of the graphics and the realism of the world. I mean, obviously, it's like they don't really say where, but I guess it's like some kind of Eastern European map or something, at least on the original map. Uh, and just it's kind of this real world setting. But I always get more tense when I'm playing this game than any of the other ones. And yeah, you get tense when you're playing, Fortnite, and there's like 5 to 10 people left, and you're building, and it's all everything's all crazy because everybody's shooting at you. And Warzone 2 is just like super crazy at the end of when you're getting toward the end game with like a small ring, and there's still like 50 people because there's like 150 people in total, or 200 people in that game. But I don't know what it is about PUBG that it might be because it's more methodical too. It's not so actiony and twitchy as like Call of Duty and Fortnite. But I don't know. I just always get so tense. Like I can just feel myself. Like as soon as I either win the match, or even if I lose, I'm just like, oh, like I can just relax my grip, and I'm just like, oh man, it's finally over. But no, I have a lot of fun with this game. It's a little bit more. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit more. It's a lot more. Uh, uh, Gun configuration management, inventory management, because you gotta, like I mentioned this before, and people probably know, you gotta, put the attachments on the actual gun, so the scopes and the barrel attachments and all this other stuff. So this, they kind of, even on the
Uh,
controller, it's kind
um,
of nice.
Unfortunately, that being one of the reasons why I don't play PUBG.
Yeah, no, yeah, I know it is easier like on the other games where everything's kind of attached, and you only have to worry about like the color of uh, the rarity and stuff like that. But and I thought about that too, like when I first started playing this like a long time ago. It's like, man, it's kind of a bummer trying to have to do all
it's
that.
it's
But
just
then
very labor intensive.
yeah,
Like
and
you're constantly going in that menu and digging around and trying to figure out which um, subcomponents can attach to which weapons, and depending on what you can attach, which should be your primary and the thing you reach for first, and yeah.
Yeah, and then, they have a little description for each thing, but you don't wanna be sitting there, in in the middle of a battle or in the middle of, people around you, like, reading these things, and, there's obviously some research you gotta do with these things, but, I think I've played it enough where I can just, tell, like, what stuff is fairly good. It's like, "Alright, I'm gonna put this attachment on," and stuff like that, but and I have my guns that I like to the different guns I like to use, but even on the controller, though, it's actually pretty nice. It's pretty easy to switch between those screens, and
So
the one thing I like
which platform are you playing this on Xbox?
Xbox, yeah,
Okay,
I've been
all right,
playing on
gotcha.
Xbox.
Yep.
Even like when you go into like the option screens for the guns, or if you're looking at your map, and they do this to some effect on in most games, but you can still move around. So and it kind of like the map or the screen is kind of opaque. You can actually slide that up and down like how much of the background you can still see. So that's kind of nice. So I can still, when I was first started playing, I'm seeing people like, going through the body, person that they brought down, they're looking at their inventory, but I can see them like kind of like moving around, like going like this, like, what are they doing? And then I realized, you could still move around as you're in that inventory screen. So it's, because you don't just want to sit there and get sniped or get shot at. So that's kind of cool. But, yeah, but I've been playing that, and I don't know, and this is another thing. I don't know if it is because of the realism, but, like, I don't think I'll ever get it like a battle pass for this game, because it's like it seems kinda weird to, like like, I have one mask that's like a dinosaur mask or something, and it's just weird to see, like a regular human person, with this big green, like, dinosaur mask, like, running around the world, and that kinda, like, obviously you're gonna be seen by that, because it's kinda like a not neon green, but it's like a lighter green, so you can obviously see it, even from far away. It's like, "Oh, yep, there's a person," because I have this goofy mask on, so that kinda plays into it too, and I don't even really think about that, like, in Fortnite, and I guess Modern Warfare. There's nothing like anything too outrageous that I've seen before. That kind of makes you stand out. But definitely in this game, you can see these goofy costumes that they do have in these games. But it's probably one I'll probably skip on the battle pass, or maybe just like maybe one day I'll just do it once just to see the kind of the goofy things they have in there. But they also had a Halloween event, kind of pretty much like every game has now lately. But and there are some things that I got, but it was like they're pretty like down to earth stuff. It's nothing like weird or anything like that. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very cool. So that wraps up our coverage of everything that we've been playing for the last couple of weeks. To take us out, we're to cover the next Pix Plays assignment. And it goes a little something like this. None of us are getting next gen consoles at launch. So neither Prime nor DBQ nor Swiss nor I are getting any launch units. So with the year winding down, it's time to punch into that area that is a bit unknown and unfamiliar. So normally during this time is when we would have an assignment that was a cleanup assignment. That was your jobs are to go back and now spend some time with any of the games that you missed that we think will be in that game of the year discussion. And try and become familiar with them before we set up our own gaming superlative awards for 2020. This is your chance to dredge up something out of your backlog that has been lying in wait but you have not gotten to yet, or a new purchase. But your challenge is to try and pick something which you could have played or had access to in some format but haven't. See my example below. We'll get into that a little bit. But maybe there's a favorite dev that you have. So maybe there's a favorite dev that you have, but there's one franchise or title of theirs that you have never played, or maybe a publisher, or maybe there's a spiritual successor or predecessor to one of your favorite games that you've never touched. Feel free to slant it in the direction that best suits you. So, part of the thing that comes to mind is I lost my train of thought there for a second. So Bungie. So Bungie's origins, like if you go far enough back, were doing things like the Myth series on PC, and so there was Myth and Myth 2. Those are not first-person shooters. So a for instance would be to take this assignment and go back and play. Be familiar with Destiny 2, which I think almost all of us are. But then go back and play something, from their earlier history, that you can find or can get access to. So the only one who's filled out a gaming assignment idea is, I'll be continuing to play WRC 9 theoretically, with And so the example of like why this is an example of you know so I'm going to dive deep on a game that is new, but that I could have played, but I haven't. But this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact that, um, whatever I find out from running that experiment is comparing and contrasting it to the fact that I haven't played any of those games in that franchise, but I always play the games in the Dirt series, and so there'll be some opportunity to talk about how that game is specifically kind of very different from Dirt, and I know I'm going to play some time, spend some time playing some Dirt Rally this weekend, so I have some good notes for comparison. So, Prime, anything that you wanted to mention about the Pix Plays assignment?
No, I'm probably gonna to dive into a Game Pass game more than likely, especially since now they have the Bethesda stuff on there, and there's a lot of games I haven't played, like Dishonor or anything like that. So maybe, and that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse too, because that's more kind of sneaky, stealth kind of a stuff, which I'm not typically a big fan of, or I like to do that kind of stuff. I'm more like a running gun kind of guy, but I might give it a try because I've heard a lot of good things about it. But or just something else that I can find on there. I can definitely go back, and I'm sure there's a lot of there's tons of games I haven't played, so I'll find something on there.
No, those are good picks, and it should be pretty exciting because the next GX show, which again will be 2 weeks from now. All of us theoretically will be on, so it'll be a good opportunity to listen to all the co-hosts compare and contrast notes. So next week is a deep dive episode.
Is a fruit composed of an inedible hard.
So it's the second time that that's happened near the end of a podcast. So next week is a deep dive show hosted by Swiss with DBQ Hams as a co-host. So we'll be swapping off. You and I, I'll be surprised if I don't hear a claim from them because naturally you and I have paired up more than once again for GX shows while they've been handling the news. So we'll see if we don't hear about that from them next week. So Osiris Prime, anything else that you want to add to tonight's discussion?
Nope. That's it. Maybe I'll even try to play a little bit more Doom since I kind of started on that too. So that's another one I can jump into.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Sure.
I recently talked about at length about my experience in Doom Eternal, and Doom 2016 is kind of becoming one of those games that I'm starting to have memories of that I kind of really want to get back to, and I have it on Switch. I gotta see if I have it on PC. I had it on, I think I had it on Switch and PlayStation 4. So we'll see if I can get back to that again as well. So that's going to do it for us. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Play the games that you like and stream the games that you love. Thanks so much tonight for anybody who happened to come to the live stream. Thanks so much for those of you who wind up viewing the archive version of this video on the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube. We appreciate you as well. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can just be notified whenever we post new content. Be back next week. I keep wanting to say a couple weeks. Be back next week to watch the deep dive episode. Be back in 2 weeks to watch all the co-hosts gather around the campfire to talk about our 2 weeks worth of gaming experiences. On behalf of Osiris Prime and myself, once again, my name has been Agasicles. His name is Osiris Prime. That's going to do it for us. Good night, good luck, and good gaming. We're out of here.